Are you looking for a vertical emulator that plays Android games, can stream Xbox games, and is the most Chungus looking Game Boy I've ever seen, and also has some dangly bits down at the bottom? Well, this is the Anbernic RG 406V, and it's got some interesting tidbits. And remember, we'll be giving away a TrimUI Smart Pro at the end of November. All of you have to do to be considered is subscribe, and then we'll tell you at the end of the month in the community post. Now back to the Anbernic tidbits. I think this is an interesting product because I don't think it's going to appeal to everyone, but as the retro gaming community gets older and older and realizes that, well, I'm not going to always need a Game Boy on me, but sometimes I do want to play a Game Boy. Just maybe at the house, and it doesn't have to be that small. Well, I think this is where the idea of Anbernic making this giant Game Boy came from. And I'm actually glad that it has Android on it. So let's dive into the hardware and see why they decided to put sticks at the bottom. And I do think these sticks are in a weird spot, but that's kind of the only spot you can put them. So in addition to those weird sticks, that do feel pretty good. We have a 4-inch IPS screen at 960 by 720 resolution, 8 gigs of RAM, Android 13, and Wi-Fi and Bluetooth. And after that 4-inch glossy screen, we have a D-pad that is squishy and not clicky, ABXY buttons that are also squishy and not clicky, 2 absolutely massive joysticks for a handheld that stick out right at the bottom. They feel very good, have light rings around the bottom, and are clicky and not squishy. The start and select buttons are squishy and not clicky. The home/back button that's in the direct center of the device is clicky and not squishy. Moving around to the left-hand side of the device, we have a button that brings us back to Android from Anbernic's home screen or vice versa, in addition to an SD card reader. On the right-hand side of the device, we have a volume rocker that is clicky and not squishy, along with a power button that is also clicky and not squishy. On the bottom of the device, we have 2 slits for our speakers that fire directly kind of into the device and through those little holes, and a headphone jack in the direct center of the device. And on the top, it's nice to see that we only have one USB-C port and an exhaust port, in addition to an LED indicator light. And on the back, you may have noticed that there are some Chungus grips. These really do help with the ergonomics of this entire device. And I don't think they were worrying about space here, so I think they were like, hey, we're making a big Game Boy anyway, let's give the grips way more and throw the triggers up at the top. So ergonomically, this thing feels fantastic in larger hands. In addition to R1, R2, L2, and L1 that are clicky and not squishy. We also on the back have some logoing and branding from a sticker and an inlet for the fan. No dust guard on this thing, it's just going to be sucking up dust bunnies. And I forgot to mention those sticks that are very weird and stick out very tall on this device. Feel very good, and they're Hall Effect sticks. They don't seem to get in the way with this device, but I really did think they would looking at it initially. But after playing it, it didn't really bother me. So I think the hardware is actually pretty good on this device. The fan doesn't really speed up unless it absolutely needs it, and I think the screen mixed in with all the controls and how the ergonomics actually feel of this are awesome. I think Anbernic's finally found the button combination with the plastics and everything that they like, and are now finally sticking to a recipe that actually works for these devices. And throwing on Android just, I think, helps, because Linux for me on low-end emulation is like, well, we could do better just with Android because you can do a lot more things. Like, if I want to play Dead Cells on here and I don't want to deal with Portmaster or having to figure out how to get it on Linux on there, I just download it from the App Store. It's great. So let's dive into the software and see what else these sticks are useful for. And all bear noises aside, I think Anbernic's done a fantastic job putting Android 13 on here in addition to adding their front end that really looks fantastic now. It comes set up with a very basic front end loader that has the console labeled and everything's in an easy list to see, click through, pick, and then go right into your game. And for the 8 and 16-bit eras of gaming, this device does incredibly well. Anything from the Game Boy Color plays fantastic on this device. It scales very well because of the screen shape and is very big because the screen is 4 inches in a square. So Game Boy Advance games play fantastic on this device, but any content that isn't square aspect ratio, you'll actually be losing and having some bars on the side, or top and bottom. That doesn't matter though, because the Sony PlayStation and the N64 for 3D consoles, moving up the line just a bit in power, play very well. With the addition of these 2 sticks, everything else just feels a little bit better when you have these sticks involved, because you don't have to do any crazy workarounds to either get the sticks that were originally developed for these types of games on here. They just work, which is really nice. Now moving up a hair to GameCube. GameCube emulation on this plays very well. The aspect ratio and size of the screen too also make it look pretty great on this size screen. The resolution is just enough and the square content fits right in. Now moving over to some other handhelds, the Sony PSP runs great on this device, and you're even able to speed up a lot of the gameplay. But the 16:9 aspect ratio of the PlayStation Portable doesn't jive with the screen very well. So playable, but not the best experience. But if you're looking for something for the Nintendo DS, I think this is a great contender. This comes with drastic preset up and have all the controls to flip screens and speed up the emulation right out of the box, which makes it awesome, because this size screen is perfect for Nintendo DS games. I really enjoyed them on this device. We also have Pico 8 games that play really well on this screen, and we can even play PS2 games on this device. Now this is kind of where the power creep ends up at, but man, this size device for $150 we're able to play PlayStation 2 on here is really nice. Being able to play all the way up to that power level without having any slowdown or any problems is great, and having Android means you can tweak this as well. In addition to having just all of this great emulation, we have the rest of Android as well. So games like 20 Minutes Till Dawn, Hunt Down, tons of different games that can scale to this screen size work really well on this device. Now you can also do some game streaming if you're in a pinch, but generally you're streaming harder to run titles. So like 16:9 content is really all you're going to get with streaming services. So it doesn't really look great on this device, but it's okay in a pinch. I think overall the Anbernic experience on Android feels much more polished. So the operating system here is actually pretty good, but I think the detriment to this device is that it is basically a square screen. So you're not going to be that invited to play 16:9 content on this thing. Now it does play that stuff, and the larger screen actually does help. But if you're looking for specifically just 16:9 content, I think you're looking for more of the other Anbernic device. I can't remember at this point. It's blue. I reviewed it a while back. It's okay, I forget the name of these things all the time. Anbernic releases these handhelds very frequently, and the one I'm trying to recommend is the RG556. If you're looking for streaming content in a 16:9 format with a fantastic screen in Android, this is the one I'd recommend. But there are also a ton of other options in this category, which is the handheld vertical market. Now at $150, that's a big ask for these type of emulators, but it does have Android on it and can do a lot more. If you're not interested in the Android, but want a vertical emulator like this with a stick, Anbernic also made a 40XXV, which is a lot cheaper and not as powerful, but does a lot of the other stuff for emulation. We also have the regular size RG35XX Plus, the MIUI Mini Plus, and there's just a ton of other options in this price point. I'll list 5 down below that are around this price point and handheld orientation. And thank you to litnxt.com for sending these over. Down in the description below is where the links for these things will be. In addition to a sale that they're doing towards the end of November and for Thanksgiving and Black Friday for tons of deals. So I think if you're looking for just a vertical emulator, you could do it for cheaper, but you can also go a little more expensive. And if you're looking for more of a 16:9 device, we have videos for those too. So take a look at these if you're still looking for emulators or just different hardware. And if you haven't yet, subscribe, because we do give away these emulators because they're filling my basement. I have no more room. There's no more room. All right, that's all I got. Davey out.